Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Muhi Khwaja. Welcome to the Muslim Philanthropy Podcast. I'm so excited to have on Dr. Sharik Siddiqui, who is the Assistant Professor of Philanthropic Studies and Director of the Muslim Philanthropy Initiative at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, Indiana University, Indianapolis. If that's not a mouthful, I don't know. But
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, you have to work out before you say it.
uh, yeah. So just such an honor to have you on the podcast. I think if there was a coined term that I would like to put out into the universe, it would be like Godfather of Muslim philanthropy. So the work that you do, the research, and what you put out on behalf of Muslim nonprofit organizations and donors, and really understanding the concepts of sadaqah and zakat and putting it in an academic framework and also a very tangible, understandable framework for everyone else is greatly appreciated. I think the work that you do through Indiana University and overall really bolsters the work that AMCF does, and it helps tell our story more effectively. So if there were no Muslim Philanthropy Initiative, it would make the work of AMCF a lot harder. But because you're there, because your team is putting out journals and reports and research, it helps us better understand the community that we're serving. So all of that to say thank you for doing everything that you do.
No, thank you for this is a collaborative effort, and we're really appreciative of the work that you are doing within the ecosystem. And I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work with you and all the other amazing actors within Muslim philanthropy.
Of course. Before we dive into your background and everything like that, I just want to note that you are nominated for the Lifetime Achievement Award and the Muslim Philanthropy Awards at AMCF. So congratulations on the nomination.
Thank you. Thank you for the, I'm honored to be nominated. Alhamdulillah.
Of course. So let's dive into who Sharik Siddiqui is. You know, I've had the pleasure of knowing you through the fundraising school at Indiana University prior to, my involvement with Muslim Philanthropy Initiative, and also just being in this space of nonprofit fundraising and getting certifications at Indiana University. But I want everybody else to learn more about you as well.
No, alhamdulillah, bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here. And, um, I live here in Indianapolis, but I haven't always lived here. I was born in England. And my dad is a doctor. He was in England to specialize. And I'm one of five kids, the second child. Three of us were born in England. And then we lived in England, Zambia, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, England, before I came here in 1993 for go to college, basically. And so I've lived here now 30 plus years in the United States. And it's been quite the journey. Never thought I would ever be studying philanthropy. In fact, I have a doctorate in philanthropy and a doctorate in law. And the big joke in my family is because, my dad's a doctor, my grandfather's a doctor, my great grandfather founded the Pakistan College of Surgeons and Physicians, right? So I'm the black sheep of the family because, don't have the doctorate that allows to people to write prescriptions. So, or at least legal ones.
Yeah. Fair. So tell us about, in the 90s, what your experience was kind of entering into the university scene in the United States, where you went to school, and just kind of the landscape at that time.
Sure. So what's interesting is I was born a Muslim, right? But when I was 13 or 14 years old, I had a crisis of faith and I left Islam and actually was on a journey to find an alternative faith. And in that process, I'm also, trying to figure out how to grow up, what I want to do with my life. So I came to the United States in 1993 with just the plan to become a doctor and then eventually go to the Middle East, right? And or somewhere like that to practice. But when I came here, I discovered a couple of things. One of the things I discovered was that there are many options for the life that I wanted to have, right? And so I came here to the University of Indianapolis and I started out as a pre-med biology major, which I think most DESE students start out freshman year. But I think by the end of that semester, first year, after the end of the first year, I determined, this isn't really what I want to do with my life, right? Because it's a, and I became a history major and a theater major, um, and uh, and did that and graduated from the University of Indianapolis. But during that period of time, I was on this faith journey of trying to find um, the right path for me. And I found this program at Oxford University, which had a program for college students in the United States to do a study abroad in Oxford around Christian spirituality. And so I went to Oxford to my senior year, which is a big joke in my family because here it's called study abroad, but in my parents' mind, I was coming back home, right? When I told my dad I want to go study abroad, he said, "What are you talking about? You are studying abroad, right?" But my mindset had changed to over those 2.5 years that I really saw myself as being at home in America, right? And so then I went to England, studied Christian spirituality, and it's during that time that a couple of professors of mine said, you're looking on, and I was trying to figure out, should I become an Episcopalian or should I become a Methodist? And it's during that period of time, a couple of my professors said, why aren't you looking at Islam? Right. And and I said, well, no, that's not my, I left them. And he said, well, why did you leave it? And what this is the interesting thing, and I think it later on when we talk about MPI, it kind of gives a real answer why we're doing MPI is when I was a child and when I thought about Islam, I didn't recognize it, right? So the people that were speaking on the bully pulpit were many of the rhetoric was hateful, right? And that wasn't aligning with what I was being taught at home, my values at home. And when you're young, you automatically rebel at everything that's being said at home as an adolescent, right? So your parents, you reject it out of hand. And that's the real value that I was being taught. And then when you hear about the rhetoric about Islam, whether inside by a few or externally, the Islamophobia, you come up with this different caricature of Islam. And I said, and they said, well, you don't understand your faith really well. Why don't, and so one of these professors was a Methodist, one was a Catholic, and they gave me a series of books to read, Plato, St. Francis of Assisi, and so on. And over this period of time, I came to this point where I became a Muslim. And so I graduated from college, and then I volunteered for then Lieutenant Governor Frank O'Bannon's campaign. And once he became governor, he, helped me get a job with the Indiana Civil Rights Commission. That's when around about that time, I became a Muslim. And then also at that time, I also discovered in college this fact that you could actually solve problems. So while I was in college, I decided I wanted to save the world. And so part of that, I took a year off and from college after graduating, rather than going directly into law school. I decided I wanted to think about what that would look like. And I created this nonprofit called the Jefferson Institute, which helped inner city at-risk youth graduate from high school and go on to college. And in that process, what you have when anybody that has a great idea, the mission, you have the idea, the number one thing that's missing is money. And so to do that, I discovered the Center on Philanthropy and the fundraising school. And then I
Yeah.
realized, wow, this is a profession. And so then that started my journey around philanthropy, and then into the master's program and so on.
Very exciting. So before gap years were even a thing, you took a gap year to kind
Too
of
many
figure that
gap
out.
years.
Yeah.
Actually, I took a gap year between I graduated from high school and I was really not happy with where I wanted to be. So I took 2.5, 3 years off between high school and college. So by the time I came to college, and I went, my parents were living in Pakistan. I left Pakistan because I was not happy there. And I went back to England. I remember I had £250 that my dad gave me. I went to England and I applied for some jobs and I joined what is now known as HSBC. So I worked for 2, 3 years in a bank there.
Mhm.
And then while I was there, I decided I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to go to college. And not having any better options before me, I came to the United States as a pre-med. So I took one gap year, then I took another gap year after I graduated from college. So too many gap years. I try not to tell the story to my children because I have four of them, and I try not to suggest gap years to them.
MashaAllah. Um, so then you find out about the Center on Philanthropy. You start a master's at Indiana University. And from there, talk about the master's program, coming into your law program, and your career after that.
Sure. So I joined the Masters in Philanthropy. I take the CFRM, the Certified Fundraising Management courses, and I'm learning about the science of philanthropy, right? The practice, the profession. And soon after, I become a Muslim, right? Just long story in itself, but I become a Muslim at that point. And then during that period of time, I realized there's a Muslim community, right? And you're engaged with that community. And there are two things I realized even before I became a Muslim. When I was studying philanthropy in the master's program, what I realized is I'm missing. Even though I wasn't a Muslim then at that point, was culturally grew up in a
Your
Muslim, right?
identity.
And
Yeah.
my identity was missing, right? The only people we talked about was Andrew Carnegie, Jane Addams, great people, right? But the point is, that's not the world I knew, right?
Mhm.
I grew up in Asia and Africa in these communities, and all of those people were missing. So that already was a big thing. And then when I became a Muslim, I realized that the Muslim community was missing some of these things. Not to say we weren't doing things amazingly well, right? We're, I argue Muslims are the best wedding planners ever, right? Sorry.
You're on mute.
And so on, right? Sorry.
Okay,
Oh,
I
sorry.
hear you now. No, you're good.
Give me 1 second.
I can hear you.
Give me 1 second.
Yep, no worries.
And and so when I became part of the Muslim community, um, I felt that they were missing some of the pieces that the school had, right? The school was missing pieces of identity that could make them a richer institution by these experiences. But we were missing, right? When the Muslim community started doing its institution building, they looked around and they said, how do we do other faith communities raise money? And back then in the 50s and the 40s and 60s, right, we had bake sales, we had church basement dance-a-thons, right? And so we created a Muslim version of that. And I think over the last 50, 60 years, we're the best event planners known to man, right? And any American company, I'd say this right now, you want a good event, go to your local Muslim, because they know how to plan the best event ever and best. So we're great event planners, but that's not the best way to raise money, right? And so I thought there was something missing here. And then when I started working at ISNA, we started that professionalization. We started the Islamic Education Forum to talk about best practices within managing nonprofit institutions. We started having a community development conference, over 100 Islamic centers. We started bringing in some of the science into it, but it wasn't holistic in terms of how we could do this. And so there, and around this time, then 9/11 hits, greater scrutiny on Muslim charities and Muslim
Sure.
philanthropy. And Muslim community at that point and Muslim nonprofits are forced in many ways to rethink how they're going to do this, and and this is where they approached Charity Navigator. Many Muslim charities were the first organizations to get 4-star charity status. In fact, in the initial Charity Navigator, people will tell you organizations like Islamic Relief and so on really hit it out the park in terms of embracing those standards. And so there's this period of time. And then around this time, around 9/11, one of the things I realized is that much of the interest within our community, there is this push, let's all become lawyers, right? But the lawyers that we wanted to become, for good reason, were civil rights lawyers, right? Because but I felt at that time, our charitable organizations, nonprofit institutions were missing lawyers that specialized in nonprofit law. Liddell George is one of the few in the nation that kind of practice this. So I then went to law school. I finished my master's and then got the law degree, largely because I wanted to sort of fill out this piece where how do nonprofit institutions sort of embrace legal best practice. So I did law school, and then by the time I graduated from law school, I left ISNA, and I became the founding co-director of legal services of one of the largest domestic violence shelters here in Indianapolis, called the Julian Center. So I worked there for 6 years. And while I was doing that, I was the voluntary executive director of something called the Muslim Alliance of Indiana. Here in Indianapolis, we published a journal. We used to have an annual convention, kind of replicated what ISNA was doing at the national level, at the statewide level. So I did that for 6 years. And then as soon as I finished my law degree, they announced the PhD program in philanthropic studies. And one of the things I thought was, Muslims need to do this, because if we don't, then we're not part of the knowledge creation business, right? Ultimately, my critique of the books about philanthropy, not including Muslims, is empty if someone's not willing to go in and do that. And so I actually did the PhD, never thought when I did the PhD, and people even asked me, will you ever go become a faculty member at a university? And I said, no, I never want to write for, because if it's right, it's publish or perish, right? And I said, I don't want to do that. I want to write what I want. I want to do this because it's a passion project. I want to sort of do the research that is important to me and my community. And I don't want to sort of be within a system that won't allow that to happen. But I'm going to do this PhD because if I don't do it, then, So I did the PhD program. Most people do it in 5 years. I did it in 9. I was a part-time student, a dad of 4 kids, doing 3 different jobs. I was a community lead, sort of doing all these activities. And so did the PhD and graduated with that. And then at some point, I had my son, my youngest son, when he was 2 weeks before his 2nd birthday, was diagnosed with leukemia. He's okay now. He's off treatment, and that was sort of a. And it coincidentally was my 40th birthday, so a profound point of time to really self-reflect. And one of the things I realized is I was doing all this stuff, but we didn't have health insurance. This was before Obamacare. I have a pre-existing condition. I have sleep apnea, and so on. And so I couldn't get health insurance. We didn't have health insurance. And I had purposefully done mission-driven work, sacrificing for example, I joke with my students, but it's true. At one point, when we calculated my salary from 3 jobs, and when we put that salary scale against the poverty statistics for our county, we were eligible for food stamps. We didn't apply for public benefits, but I realized I was doing a disfavor to my family, and I decided that this is a time. So I reached out to my mentor, Gene Temple, who's the founder of the School of Philanthropy. He was at the time the president of IU Foundation. And I told him, look, I'm looking for a job, and I'm willing to do anything, and I need a job with benefits. And so he said, why don't you come back and work for IU Foundation? So I went back, worked with the School of Education for a couple of years. And enjoyed being back in fundraising in a big institution with
Right.
resources, which is very different than our experiences within the
Absolutely.
Muslim community, right?
Yeah.
And around that time, there's an association of our field. It's called Arnova, the Association for Research and Nonprofit Organizations and Voluntary Action. If you're an academic that studies nonprofit philanthropy, volunteer sector around the world, this is your professional association. You're a member of that. They publish the top peer review journal, and they were going through a crisis. And so, one thing, if you're a Muslim nonprofit professional or a leader, you know how to manage crises, right? We're always in startup mode, we're always in crisis mode, and we're
Yeah.
always trying to take organizations. So I applied for this job, and I think had they not been in crisis, I don't think I would have made it there. But I think because they were in crisis, probably amazing people that could have gotten that job never applied. And so
Mm.
I lucked out, and I became the executive director of Arnova. I got them through that crisis. And over those 6 years, we doubled our membership. We created an endowment. We created a very robust diversity, equity, inclusion program, right? We globalized. Um, I mean, it was incredible. I was really privileged to work with a great board, great volunteers, but it really put me, it took me from who I was within the Muslim community to actually have a global reputation within the academic field. And it's around
Sure.
this time that I decided, because I was in the business of building the infrastructure of knowledge production, I figured out, how do you build knowledge, right? It's an art in itself, it's a science, right? How do you
Sure.
build these books and knowledge? And at that point, Farhan Latif, who's a really good friend of ours, the president of Al Hibri
Yeah.
Foundation, he took me to Tahura in Devon, and we were having this great conversation. And he said, Sharik Bhai, you're doing great work for the rest of the world. You built this Africa initiative, you've done all this stuff, but we really need you to have skin in the game and come back in and help the Muslim community, because the Muslim community really needs people like you to sort of be engaged. And and so so this was a challenge. I said, okay, how do we do this, right? I can volunteer. He said, no, we need you to be full time in. And I said, well, Farhan, I can't do that because I promised my wife I would never go work for Muslim organizations again, right? I'll go volunteer for them. I'll do that. This whole new story, whole new podcast, right? But we won't do that just because she didn't want us to be in that precarious situation ever again. And I promised her I would never do that. So she said, you can go volunteer, you can travel for free, you can do free consulting, all that stuff, but you're never going to work there. And so, around this time, I started getting approaches by different universities across the United States saying, hey, have you thought about becoming an academic and
Hmm.
coming in and doing this kind of, and I'd already created a journal. I'd already started doing some work on Muslim philanthropy as a volunteer. And they were saying, why don't you do this somewhere professionally? And so, um, I was privileged to have like a number of job offers from a number of universities. I ended up coming to the Lilly School largely from advice from two of our colleagues. Farhan is one, and Kashif Sheikh, who's at Pillars. Both of them
Yeah.
told me, they said, Sharik, you can go to all these great universities and they're all good, but if you could be at the Lilly School and do this work, you automatically sort of catapult this work to the top. And so their push was, of all these offers that you have, the Lilly School of Philanthropy really provides steroids to the mission. And
Yeah.
so I'm really grateful to both Farhan and Kashif for, you know, being those guys that, were willing to listen to a dude and sort of give that guidance. And so when the Lilly School of Philanthropy created the Muslim Philanthropy Initiative, did a national search, I was privileged to be one of the 4 finalists, and then eventually got this job. And I've been here now 5 or 6 years.
That's really remarkable. I remember shortly after starting American Muslim Community Foundation, I came out to Indiana University for one of your first MPI academic conferences, talking about the Muslim Journal, and then getting to meet various grad students and undergrad students. So from your involvement and creation of MPI, I've personally seen the depth of the program, talking about research from Turkey and other countries all across the world, and of course, US Muslim philanthropy as well. Um, and we have mutual friends in the PhD program now. There's the Zakat Foundation Institute that's sponsoring and providing scholarships for a lot of people in the master's program. So talk a little bit more about the impact over the years that MPI has been able to create.
Absolutely. I think, when I talked to my boss, Amir Pashik, our dean, and then my colleague, David King. So the founders of MPI actually is Amir Pashik, who's the dean of the Lilly School, and David King, who's the director of the Lake Institute on Faith and Giving.
Yeah.
And so when I got the job, I sat down with them and said, what do we want to do? And they said, look, academic institutions do four things very well. They produce amazing future leaders and scholars, right? They train people that can't become scholars and leaders, right? So they provide that training. Third, they produce new knowledge so that that can sort of guide and be a beacon for guidance going forward. And they provide thought leadership, right? And so within those four realms, we had to figure out key champions. So one of the things when it came to knowledge production, one of the things that I realized is just like I, as a 13, 14-year-old, did not recognize the beauty of Islam and Muslims, I realized as I was going around the country, going around the world, people didn't recognize the beauty of Muslim giving. So there were 5 or 6 popular myths. Muslims aren't generous. Muslims only give all their money in America goes overseas, all those things. And I said, maybe it's true. And so we needed to have empirical data. So talk to Islamic Relief. Islamic Relief funded a survey every year that we do on Muslim American giving, which busted all these myths, right? So that became our signature research that said, no, Muslims are generous. In fact, more generous than the general population. They're only 1.1% of the population, despite being poor, right, and young, but they give 1.4% of all giving, right, individual giving. Muslims only give a small percentage of their giving outside of the country. The vast majority, around 85%, stays in the US. Domestic poverty relief being one of the most important things to them. Muslims give to their houses of worship, but less than any other faith community in America. Muslims are concerned about civil rights, but it's not a top priority. Civil rights is tied at fourth with education and environment and youth, right? So it's important, but not even more important than people that are poor. So we busted those myths because data helps us recognize who we are and allows other people to recognize. So that's one. So Islamic Relief championed that. So that was important. The next piece was we needed students to be part of our master's and PhD program. And one challenge that many Muslims have is that we don't have, because we're a poor community, we don't have the resources to do that. And so Zakat Foundation Institute basically created a collaboration through which they fund scholarships to the point where close to a third of our master's students today are from Muslim majority countries or Muslim students. Like, you have students from Bangladesh, from India, from Nigeria. Think about some of the important people in our field, like Anwar Khan, founder of Islamic Relief, Ahmed Shahata, current CEO, David Hawa, vice president, he's in marketing for Islamic Relief, Arshia Ali Khan, Muslim Legal Fund of America. All of these are our alums, right? And it's because of this program. And then in our PhD program, we have students there in our new doctorate in philanthropic leadership. So that was the second pillar. The third pillar was, what about those people that don't have the time to do a master's program, but still need training? So then we went around the country, partnered with the Center for Muslim Philanthropy, United Mission for Relief and Development, and basically trained CFRMs. And we produced hundreds of certified fundraising managers, both in the US and overseas. Intuitive Solutions was part of that, and so on. So different champions, different community partners came together and so on. And that training continues. And now we are offering three courses that are built particularly from that experience. One is a 2-day course called Fundraising for Muslim Nonprofits, in which you, Muhi, are one of the faculty members.
Right.
The other one is a 4-day course. It's called Muslim Philanthropy and Nonprofit Leadership and Management. It's a 4-day course that does fundraising, leadership, volunteer management, project management. We have another course that is for high school kids and college students. It's a 16-week asynchronous learning program called Muslim Philanthropy and Leadership. We want young people to sort of understand how they can be better at this. So that was the third. And then the last piece was thought leadership, the program you came to, which was in partnership with the Mott Chair, brought. We worked with the Galileo Fund to host a faith and philanthropy summit at the Vatican, right? And so there were opportunities like that that come to the Lilly School that allowed the Muslim community to be engaged. And so, and in that process, we've launched a Journal for Muslim Philanthropy and Civil Society. That's resulted in, it's now a Scopus Index journal, so it's a reputable one. We've just launched a new one, which is Muslim Humanitarianism Review. We figured Muslim stories are missing. So this journal is focused on case studies. What are the case studies? And so, we just published something from National Zakat Foundation UK, which showed that for every £1 National Zakat Foundation spends on housing support in UK, it saves the British government £60. So now that National Zakat Foundation can go to the UK government and say, hey, partner with us, bring more money in. We're doing this in a very efficient way. So those stories, we've published 5 books, Philanthropy in the Muslim World. We have all of our reports and our publications on our website. We've got 8-10 publication reports and so on. But one of the things in this journey that we realized is that there isn't enough empirical data about Muslim majority countries either, right? And as American Muslims, whether we like it or not, perceptions of what's happening overseas impact us, right? It may not be fair, but it's true. And at the same time, if we can help Muslim majority countries where the vast majority of poverty actually exists in Muslim majority context, if we can help them with data and so on. So as I was going around, we published this book called Philanthropy in the Muslim World. We realized there isn't data. And so then I would ask the question, why isn't there? And I said, it's impossible to do. So my team and I said, hey, we may not come up with the best data out there, but we have a system that we've done in the United States. So we created a sample survey, and then we started implementing that survey in a representative sample studies in different countries. And in our first year, we have 6 countries done: Turkey, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Kuwait, and Jordan. Next year, we're going to do 4 more. So the goal is over the next 5-7 years, we could have empirical data on another 30 countries, right? And all this data helps communities to recognize who they are. It allows everybody else to recognize the power of what's possible. And then data-driven decisions can actually happen as a result of that, right? So we're uplifting people across the world and so on. So that's some of the work that we've done. And one of the things I'm really proud about is that all of our research is available on our website at no cost, publicly available. Part of this has also been, we've created in collaboration with Penny Appeal, emerging scholars program. So we're identifying scholars that study Muslim philanthropy and sort of give them a boost. So the challenges I faced when I studied Muslim philanthropy as a graduate student, everybody told me not to do it. But because I didn't care, because I had a job, I was doing all these things, I was just doing the academic study of philanthropy as a hobby, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did it. But most people that are in this academic world actually need jobs afterwards. So we've created programs, and we're very, if you think about some of the people that have gone through our postdoc, the head of Louisiana State's Masters in Nonprofit Studies is one of our alums, Portland State. So we've been able to have this kind of impact within our small world of philanthropy. Sorry, I could go on and on and on.
No. It's really inspiring to hear kind of the genesis and the impact of a very young organization and part of a household institution. So I definitely appreciate the trajectory and really just see a lot more potential, and exciting to see where it will all go. Um, so, some of our overlaps are around teaching these courses in the community. And the fundraising school has a fantastic curriculum. If you are a fundraiser, definitely look into the certificate of fundraising management from Indiana University. That CFRM is 4 courses that you would take through the fundraising school. Uh, Principle and techniques of fundraising, developing annual sustainability, and then you get to pick 2 others that are part of that certificate program. In terms of the community engagement and the potential you see, you've had hundreds of Muslim fundraisers take these courses. How do you feel the professional development of the Muslim community is coming along, and where does it need to go?
Sure. I think like everything in our community, there are those that are able to do this in a more robust way, and there are many more that aren't. And it's largely because the Muslim nonprofit sector in the United States, in particular, is, I would argue, anemic, right? Far too often, when we look around, we think about Islamic Relief, amazing organization, Helping Hands, Zakat Foundation, but they're very successful, largely, even though a small portion of American Muslim philanthropy goes overseas, but because there are few organizations, we're able to aggregate it, and then they're supposed to, and they actually are an example of what is possible, right? How, if you actually invest in good institutions, how you can have an oversized impact. Like I would argue, and I've been to the field all over the world as part of my book for poverty and monotheistic religions, right? Some of my case studies show that if you look at the work of Islamic Relief and Penny Appeal, all these charities overseas, they actually do more with less. So
Mm-hmm.
first of all, but they do it because we've invested in them, because they have on this 2 sides. One, they have this amazing thing that they invest in professional development, so their teams know the very best of the science, but they're driven by faith. So ihsan is very important for them. Excellence is very important, and they want to have more impact. So they're not saying, oh, because such and such charity can do for this dollar can do this much, we'll do the same. They want to do more, right? And so those are examples, but those are the only organizations. If you think about civil rights organizations in the Muslim community, if you think about hunger relief organizations in the Muslim community, if you think about all these institutions, they're underfunded, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with that underfunding, there's a couple of reasons for that, right? One reason for that is the way Muslims give, that is largely emergency driven. But the bigger reason for that, I would argue, is something that's fixable. Over time, Muslims are poorer today, poor faith communities today. That's going to change. My children are poorer than I am, right? But 10 years from now, my kids are going to earn more. In fact, I was joking, like my daughter who's married and her husband today earn more in their first job than my wife and I earn today after 30 years of service, right? So our kids are going to make it, but that's 20 years from now. So there's a demographic shift that will happen, which will bring in a new supply of dollars into our community. But the other reason why I think the supply is low in philanthropic dollars to Muslim nonprofits is because we're not doing philanthropy or fundraising in a professional way. And I think, not to say that we don't do it exceptionally well, but we're not using the science of fundraising, right? What you used to do
Yeah.
at the American Red Cross, right? And what Islamic Relief is doing, right? And so I think what we need to do is figure out a way to invest more in professional development. The challenge is this: those that can afford it, right, do it. Islamic Relief is an example. You talk to them, I've trained their entire team. They've been through this program, and they'll tell you, we're not the only reason. I wish I could take all the credit, but they said in their journey, right, it's helped.
Yeah.
Helping Hand for Relief and Development. Many of these organizations have gone through our trainings, and they to this day say that has had a profound impact on their work. but they can afford it. They have the resources to do that. Most Muslim nonprofits don't. And then if you're stuck with a crisis and professional development, donors aren't going to fund. So what I
Yeah.
think needs to happen is we need to figure out a way to make these trainings more accessible to more Muslim nonprofits, and they're expensive, right? Doing the CFRM is one of the best things I could have done in my life. It really
Yeah,
changed my life in terms of my career and everything I've done. I
for
would
sure.
say the master's program and CFRM really changed my life. But not everybody has the resources to take that, right? And so what are ways in which we can engage? And I think that other faith communities have great models for this. For example, the Lilly Endowment just made a collaboration with the Lilly School where they're funding the Lilly School to go out and help train grassroots nonprofits, right? So we need those kinds of champions. And I know AMCF has done work
Absolutely.
in this, and El Hibri has done work in this, and Pillars has done, and
Mhm.
Zeba Rahman at Doris Duke Islamic Arts Foundation. You guys have been, but we need more of you, right? Because the volume of, we estimate there are 8 to 10,000 Muslim nonprofits. The
Right.
vast majority of non-Muslim nonprofits have budgets of $200,000 and one staff. And that staff
Wow.
person doesn't do just fundraising, they do
Sure.
everything, right?
I've been there.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have to figure out a way to increase the number of people that we can train. We need to create the volume so that in the future these nonprofits are vibrant enough so that when our graduates graduate from with their masters in philanthropy, they want to go work for them because they're
Right.
offering them the kind of salaries that we need to do that. So those are some things that I think we have to engage in. But I think the professional development is, I would argue, not because I truly believe it is the short-term band-aid. Our master's program, our PhD program is the long 20 years from now, when we're going to see an impact, the transformation is going to be
Mhm.
because of the master's programs, right?
Yeah.
That's what, but in our short term, the solutions that we have, the band-aid that we need is professional development. And I think we need to
Absolutely.
have a Marshall Plan to do that.
Yeah. So, philanthropists, those of you that are listening, everybody out there, make sure that the nonprofits you love to support have adequate professional development budgets for their staff, not only in fundraising, but across the entire team, whether that's marketing, HR, accounting, every single aspect of the organization needs to be strengthened, to be fine tuned. And of course, fundraising is a big part of that. But there's so much more to these organizations in which they can benefit.
And
Um,
just to your point, Muhi, one of the things I tell Muslim philanthropists, I say, look, when you're in a fundraising dinner, right, and you're inspired and they give you a cause, like you want to feed someone or you want to do this, and you decide in a number, your heart has now inspired and you said, I'm going to give this much. Then take a breath, add 10 to 20% more, and designate that extra 10 to 20% through a professional development.
right,
Don't if you're going to give $10,000, don't take out of that 10,000 and redesignate some of that to professional development because these organizations need that 10,000. They in
sure,
fact need more than that 10,000 to do the work they're doing. But what I'm saying is every philanthropist that really cares about the work that they're doing, think about that initial number and give that. Then add another 10, 20% more and say this extra money is for the professional development of your team so that you can get that extra level of support. So we're not taking away from the existing pie, we're expanding. And one of the great things about the Muslim community that I've seen through our research, our empirical research, every time there's a crisis, we have the capacity to give more. It's not that we
right.
redistribute the pie gets bigger. So we have to do this strategically. We have to build a bigger pie strategically. And it means that bigger pie that we're building, we have to designate additional funds to professional development. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think that's a
Not at all.
really important strategy for
Yeah,
philanthropists today.
I love that idea. And I would add to it that another 10 to 20% should go to an endowment for that organization.
100%, 100%,
So, sorry to
100%.
hit your wallet a little bit harder, everyone, but those are some sage advices from Sharik. Um, lastly, just kind of want to hear from you. Um, what do you feel is, aside from the master's program, the PhD program, people, if they haven't gotten their CFRM, definitely do that. But in context of Muslim nonprofits in the United States, those 8 to 10,000, so many of them have a budget of $200,000 or less, one staff member. What can those smaller nonprofits do and focus on that will give them the biggest ROI in their capacity to serve their community?
Absolutely. What I recommend to most nonprofits is that the big mistake we make, and I've done this, right? Nonprofits come about how someone sees a problem and says, let's solve it. And then they
Yeah.
call their brother and their sister and their friends, and then we come together. And now a bunch of us in the community are going to work and then coming home. And then once we get home, we basically are immersed in setting this nonprofit up. And at some point, we just get really, really tired and then
Mm-hmm.
say, look, so then let's say, let's find one person to do some of this work. And then we hire that person and we usually pay them less than what they normally get paid, right? So this person
Yeah.
takes a pay cut to come work for us. And that's cool. That's how grassroots nonprofits start out. And then we have them do everything that we were going to do, and that's just too much. And what I'm suggesting is that first hire is important, but that first hire should be strategic. So, for example, if you are a nonprofit that deals with education, your first hire is someone who's an education expert. Or if you're healthcare, I think that's a wrong strategy for startups.
Okay.
Your first hire should be someone who can do what you don't know how to do, and that is fundraising.
Yeah.
So hire a person, right? There was someone taking minutes before as a volunteer. Keep on doing that. Someone was managing the books before as a volunteer. They can do that. But the
Yeah.
science of fundraising is something that is difficult. So your first hire should be fundraising. And if you already have a fire, have already hired someone, don't fire them. Just train them to become a fundraiser and make 80-90% of their job to be fundraising. Because if
Sure.
they're going to raise money, they're going to take your organization to that next level, right?
Right.
Whereas what we do is we always think, oh, we're a psych nonprofit, so our first hire should be a psychologist. No, your first hire should be a fundraiser. And so what I would do
Love
is,
that.
for those of your nonprofits that want to go to the next step, redefine that hire's position, train them, and their job description, and the rest of you do the stuff that you know how to do and have been doing all along.
Yeah. Wonderful. So thank you so much, Sharik. It's always a pleasure chatting with you, nerding out about philanthropy. And I'm just so excited about the potential that our community has to deliver on all of these missions that our community is focused on. And I could talk for hours longer about this, but we'll put a pin in it here and hope that people learn more about the Muslim Philanthropy Initiative at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy at Indiana University, Indianapolis, which I'm glad that they made it shorter because it used to be Purdue University as well. So glad that they rebranded that. Thank you, Sharik, my friend, for everything that you do and for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for the work that you do. And particularly, I want to thank you for establishing the American Muslim Community Foundation. I tell people that 100 years from now, when people are going to be writing about the American Muslim community, I think the most important stories will be the AMCFs, the Pillars, the El Hibris, and so on. Because if you think about when we think about history, we think about the waqfs, we think about the madrasas, we think about that. And so thank you so much. May Allah bless you for the work that you do, and may Allah bless you and give you barakah into your family for this work. So thank you so much. And I'm really grateful to the work that AMCF and you are doing and for having me on.
Likewise, of course. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.